There are a ton of really strange and bizarre NES controllers out in the wild. In fact, every time I go to a game swap or a retro video game store, I'm always hunting for really bizarre controllers because I want to find the next cool thing, the thing I didn't know was released back in the day, and something that might offer some kind of feature that the original NES controller didn't have. And when I think of thumbsticks, I never think of an NES. But I guess I was wrong. A fan of the show named Marty sent in a controller that does something a little bit different. It's got a thumbstick, and it works really, really well. The design of this controller is pretty weird. I mean, just look at it. It's got a weird little handle that protrudes from one side. You got a trigger button on the front, a button on the back, a little turbo switch right here, and then you also have the start and select button right on the top. Now, unfortunately, the start and select button are in no way accessible by this hand unless you have really freakishly long fingers. I don't, they're short and stubby, so unfortunately for me, I can't access the select or start button unless I use my other hand, which I guess isn't the biggest deal in the world, but because of the way this is designed, I was hoping all the buttons could be hit by that one hand alone. Now, another problem I had is that both the trigger and back button here, both A and B, are incredibly soft and squishy, which I don't like. I like to have a little bit more of a tactile feel. But taking all that into consideration, this controller is still really good, because that little joystick there, that little directional joystick, is damn solid. It's got an 8-direction joystick, which is pretty normal for the NES, but what's really cool about it is that it has a little bit of a click when you move it in certain directions. Now, you can't really hear the click, but you can feel it with your thumb. Now, you can play this controller two ways. One, holding it like this, and then holding the joystick like it's this tiny little nub, or you can do the way I do it, which is hold it from underneath and use your thumb in the direction you want to go. Folks, I gotta say, this joystick here alone is worth getting this controller for, because it's just so damn responsive. It makes the original NES controller seem almost squishy by comparison, which is kind of funny, but unfortunately the buttons just aren't as responsive as I'd like it to be. Still though, the character movement or any movement you're doing with the joystick is just so good that you almost kind of forgive it for not having the best buttons in the world. Now, this controller here was given to us in a very poor state and we had to clean it, but it was kind of good once we had fixed it and got it up and running. If you find one of these things out in the wild, you'll probably have the same experience I did. Although I hope yours didn't smell like old hamster dust, because this one did. I'm not sure why. If you're ever looking for these out in the wild, it's called the Quickshot Chimera 2, and hopefully your box doesn't smell as bad as ours did. But when we got this one sent in to us, it was boxed. I mean, not sealed and brand new, but it had been in there for a very long time. As far as I can consider this controller being used, I can't imagine it was used very much. So all the features of the controller were pretty much in working condition. But if you go to some kind of flea market and you find one of these things that are unboxed and it's been used for a really long time, you might find its responsiveness a little bit lackluster. So make sure when you're going out to buy one of these things that when you touch that little joystick that it's got a slight little click to it. And if you can feel that click, well, buy it, try it out. You might find that some of the NES games you're a big fan of that you probably can't control the best might work better with this controller's directional pad. Hell, if you know of an NES game that doesn't really use the buttons that much but focuses more on the D-pad, try this controller out. It might be really fun. Really, the best comparison I can think of with this controller is analog joysticks on modern video game consoles. That's really the best way I think about this thing. They're probably not as good as this is, funny enough, but seriously, if you have the chance and you can find one of these things, you gotta try it out. You might really like it.